where we are putting death out of business. And today we have a very, very special episode. It's always a special episode, but this is an extra special episode because he's a Nobel Prize winner, he's a doctor, he's a gerontologist, which is my favorite part of the whole thing. It's Dr. Bill Andrews. He's all the way from Nevada. And we all know why Nevada is a special place, because that's where Chairman Gennady Stolarov II is from, one of our favorite people to have here on the program as well. Dr. Bill Andrews, hello and welcome.
Hello, and I do have to correct you on one thing. I am not a Nobel Prize winner. A lot of people think I am, but I don't know where these rumors get started. But what I was doing was I was working with a team of people. I joined a team of people that had already been working on telomeres and telomerase. And even though I was the person that led the research that actually ended up discovering human telomerase, it was the colleagues that I was working with, Elizabeth Blackburn and Carol Greider, that got the Nobel Prize in medicine. And that's completely understandable. The Nobel Prize in medicine is usually awarded to people who initiated research, not to the people that actually made the discoveries, because there's no such thing as a medical discovery that's made by just one person. So.
Well, I don't know whether you're being humble there or whatever, but because that's in mainstream media. I mean, I go anywhere to read about you, and I see that all the time. So I think you might be being humble.
No, I see people. I'll correct people, and then they say, "Well, I'm working on Nobel Prize winning research." Okay, which is kind of still everybody wants to put that word Nobel Prize in there. It's never been a goal of mine. But when some famous person who's in their 90s, some old movie star or something like that, walks out on stage and looks and feels and behaves 25 again, I think I'll be very happy to accept a Nobel Prize, if I had anything to do with it.
I wish you all the best, and there's some maybe that's a better goal. Maybe we'll just put it in the future and keep aiming for it. There's some great people who have been on that committee and won that prize, and some great teams and stuff. And I always look forward to it. Them hanging out in Stockholm or wherever it is, and the physics prize is always something that I always keep my eyes out. Those guys, those astrophysicists.
Yeah. I follow all that, yes.
Yeah, all that. But anyway, putting that aside, so that's some fake stream media for you, some mainstream, the headline drop or whatever. But yeah, you're from Sierra Sciences as well. I mean, that's real, right?
Yes, Sierra Science. I'm in the building right now. I'm in our conference room. We actually have 10,000 square feet of research space, lots of lab equipment. We own everything. We have a lot of robotic systems, a lot of microscopes and electrophoresis, PCR machines. So we actually are a fully functional lab, and we have very little business here. I don't consider myself a business person at all. I consider myself a scientist, and so I try to spend most of my time actually at the lab bench, but I have to get out and speak every once in a while at conferences and stuff. We're real. We're doing science, and I'm just can't overestimate how the challenge is. There's a lot of work involved in the science, but we're making a lot of progress, and I hope to have some big announcements soon.
Cool. Yeah, and I really look forward to getting digging deeper on that with you in just a moment on telomerase and all the good work that's going on there. But before we get to that, you're an ultra marathon runner. You've been running your whole life. Do you briefly want to tell everybody how do people stay fit and healthy and all that, and where did you sort of get inspired to go down this path? I mean, does it start with in childhood? Because I think the running and the lifestyle, it must have started from somewhere, yeah.
Well, when I was a kid, I was always running, and my parents weren't the kind of parents that would tell me to quit running when I was running around the pool. It's just my parents my parents were so enthralled with the fact that I ran everywhere that they entered me in my first long distance race when I was 10 years old. And it was a 1 mile, which would be 1.6 kilometers, or is it 1.4? Yeah, I think it's 1.6 kilometers. And it was around an indoor track that you had to go around 10 times to complete. And even though I was competing against like 20 other kids in my age group, I lapped second place twice. So I learned that I was a long distance runner when I was 10, and I competed in long distance running all through high school, college. I also did track, but I mostly high jump but the 2 mile, the 1 mile distances. But after I got out of school and went to graduate school, I started doing marathons. And I really focused on the adventure marathons because I never liked the really crowded ones where it's so packed you end up having to walk the first 2 miles just to get out of the crowd. But I like trail running. I like the adventure. That led to ultra marathon running in middle to late 1990s, and that's been my obsession ever since in terms of exercise. I just like to run 100 miles, which again is like 160 kilometers, and it's like it's something I consider fun just because of the adventure, but it's healthy, and that's a side effect, so it's good.
Yeah, it is really healthy, and it's really incredible. I went to cross country all the time. We did a thing called cross country, and yeah, that was great. Some of the best experiences of my life running around and around. Just it's freedom. It's the ultimate freedom. For me, that's what it was all about. It was a place where, I couldn't be told what to do by external stimuli. It was just me and my head and my legs and nature and other people, and it's a bit competitive. And for me, that was great. Yeah, and since then I got on the bike, and I've always liked the bike since then. I thought the bike's always been a good calling. It's a new degree of freedom because you get to stop off halfway and eat 3 ice creams, and that's not good, but I thought it was.
when you're running, sometimes you can get away with those kind of things, especially with sugar, because you don't get insulin spikes when you eat a lot of sugar while running. And it's you burn 100 calories, which is 25 grams of sugar every mile. So it's okay. That's your excuse. You can eat ice cream whenever you're running, except the saturated fats are still going to be a problem, but that's okay.
Yeah. That's true. All right, so you're the man. You're in the 90s. You did all the research to basically destroy a lot of the diseases when you start to really think it through. What did you do what are these telomerase things that people what are these telomerase? What did you do in the 90s to discover them? And let's talk telomerase.
Well, okay, so there's telomeres and there's telomerase. There are 2 different things. And telomeres are the very tips of our chromosomes. I had been, not as early as when I was 10 years old. It was when I was 10 years old, my father not only got me into this running, but he also one time told me, since I'm so interested in science and medicine, I should, sorry, I'm going to turn my phone off. Okay, so when I was 10 years old, my father said, since I'm so interested in science and medicine, I should grow up, become a doctor, and find a cure for aging. And I never forget, because he said, I don't know why nobody's done this yet. So I've been obsessed with that ever since then. But it was through high school and college when I was really studying aging, trying to find out all the theories. I started realizing that none of the theories made any sense. I decided that there had to be some kind of clock that's ticking inside of us that controls the aging process, which would explain a lot of things, like cats and dogs age at different rates than us, and why people in different environments age in the same rate as we do here. So I was looking for a clock, and I was attending anti-aging conferences, even though at the time my focus was cancer research and heart disease research and inflammation research. I actually was awarded National Inventor of the Year in the United States in 1997 for my cancer research. But my obsession was aging. And then one day at a conference in, I think it was 1992, I heard somebody talk about the fact that telomeres shorten. They're tips of our chromosomes. You can see them in a microscope. You can actually measure them with different techniques, and you can see that the older you get, the shorter they get. But it was just a correlation at the time, and the guy, his name was Calvin Harley, Dr. Calvin Harley, he was proposing the idea that maybe this shortening is the cause of aging. So before he could even get off the podium, I was talking to him saying, has anybody figured out how to re-lengthen them to see if it reverses aging? And he says they'd been working on it for years with no solution, but the solution had to be in our reproductive cells, because telomeres don't get shorter in our reproductive cells. If they did, our children would be born with shorter telomeres than we have, and therefore older than we have, if that theory was right. So I ended up going to work with him right away. I just left my previous company because of that. I was so focused on aging. Cancer was important, but not as important as aging was to me. So I went to work with Calvin Harley, and about 3 months later, I discovered telomeres, human telomeres, and was able to put that into human cells in a petri dish and show that it reversed aging in every way imaginable. It's the only thing that's ever done that. You can hear all kinds of different things you can buy to tout themselves as cures for aging or reverse aging, but they only do things like reverse your energy or something like that. But this we saw all the biomarkers of aging get reversed, and that was mid 1990s. And then we also did the antisense of telomerase into cancer cells and found out that it killed every cancer cell. And it was because it was essentially causing the cancers to die of accelerated aging. But the company I was working for at the time, Geron Corporation, their investors decided there would be a quicker return on investment if they just focused on cancer and not aging. So I left with Geron's blessing. I left and started Sierra Sciences to focus on the aging. And that's what I've been doing for the last 20 years, is capitalizing on this discovery of this enzyme telomerase. And I'm trying to figure out how to produce telomerase in all the cells of our body, not just our reproductive cells, so that I can lengthen telomeres. And other studies by other people have been done since I left Geron Corporation, where people have shown that by gene therapy, which is one of the things I was still doing when I was at Geron Corporation, using gene therapy to deliver telomerase to human cells, people were able to reverse aging in human skin that had been grown on the back of a mouse by every way imaginable. And then there were mice that were engineered to age like humans. The common thought is that mice and humans age the same way, but they're very, very different. So in order to really use a mouse to study aging in humans, it's best to use an engineered mouse that ages the same way as humans. And when they did that, they found aging reversed in every way imaginable. Dr. Ron DePino, who actually did the study at Harvard, called it a remarkable reversal of the aging process. And he also saw that the incidence of cancer decreased. Okay, there's a rumor going around by some people that by extending lifespan or extending telomeres and putting telomerase into cells is actually going to increase the risk of cancer, but it was actually the opposite that was observed. So we've got all that proof of concept, but we've been working on trying to develop pills. Like we've discovered some chemicals, we've discovered a lot of natural products that when swallowed will get into your blood and in all cells of your body and induce the production of telomerase. But it doesn't make us younger yet, because telomere lengthening and shortening is like a tug of war, whereas in the absence of any telomerase, you've just got a one-sided tug of war where people are pulling to shorten your telomeres. But when we add one of our supplements to the human cells, then we put people on the other side, but they they don't win that tug of war. They just decrease the rate of shortening. So we don't like, maybe we might have 100 people on the shortening side and maybe 3 people on the lengthening side. So what I'm trying to do is find ways of improving that. And so we're doing a lot of work with medicinal chemistry and stuff, trying to develop, and we're screening natural products, just looking for more and more potent, what are called telomerase inducers. But on the side, I mentioned that we had done gene therapy when I was still at Geron. Gene therapy is where you actually take something like a virus. It's an engineered virus, so it's perfectly safe and stuff like that. But you engineer this virus so it delivers a telomerase gene to any cell that it infects, and then that cell produces telomerase and lengthens the telomeres. And that has been very successful at reversing the aging process in every way imaginable in the studies that I had previously mentioned, but not in humans yet. But we have, and the reason why it's taken so long for humans is because the gene therapy is, even though I said the virus isn't toxic, the way it gets into the cell does cause a lot of damage, and it does increase the risk of cancer by random events that occur when it integrates into the chromosomes. But about 10 years ago, a new gene therapy was discovered called adeno-associated virus, and we started using that 10 years ago, and we've been having extremely good success with it. The hard part's been trying to get approval, get clinical protocols and approvals and stuff like that to actually treat a human. It's been years, and I've licensed it to another company called Labella Gene Therapeutics, and they are actually now looking at, they might actually treat their first patient next month. Okay, they're saying right now, sometime between early November and early January, the first patient will actually be treated. And I'm kind of excited about that. I've been involved in a lot of clinical studies, and I know that practically every clinical study starts off with problems, and then you have to learn things from doing it, and you have to tweak things to make it better. And so maybe the first few patients we don't get the results that we observe, but we're measuring 160 different biomarkers, and so no matter what happens, we're going to know if it didn't work, why it didn't work, and we can tweak the system. And I think we're close to actually having some like famous movie star walk out on stage and who's 95 but looks 25 and behaves and feels in every way imaginable. And I think that's coming really soon.
That's yeah, and we go over the implications of a world without aging here on all the time on this show, because we talk about a lot of the different advances in technology. We talk about overpopulation. We talk about all of the ethical sides of that actually coming true. But it's kind of a hypothesis, here and there and everywhere, if it happens, when it happens. But you're the man making it happen. I mean, this is incredible news, and if it's something that can come to fruition, I think, for the most part, that's completely better. I mean, that's you're gonna have less pressure, psychological stress on this Darwinian complex of finitude of life, and I think that the world will become a happier place, a better, happier a place on the whole. I think you're going to reduce a lot more things than just an individual's aging process where they move through time and they get older, but you're also going to have side effects like you're going to have less wars and less societal stress and different culture, different music, different artwork, different a change in the global conversation of how people interact and how people move about. It's going to change. It's going to change a lot of things because it's different from what we've ever known before. If that comes to an eventuality, which you're saying is possible by reversing by growing the telomerase, right? Or which one is it? They should
Growing the telomeres using
telomeres.
the enzyme telomerase. Yes, telomerase is the enzyme that lengthens the telomeres. Um, the you know the, there are going to be a lot of problems in the world when we cure aging, and people are going to have to solve those problems. But I always think to myself, we have a lot of problems now.
Yeah.
There's a lot of nursing homes, assisted living homes. A lot of old people are miserable, unhappy, and most of the people aren't really aware of all that. But I believe that maybe, let's say, 100 years from now, when we do have a cure for aging and it's been around for a while, and suddenly we have all the problems that everybody's afraid of, probably not overcrowding by then, but we will have a problem. The biggest problem I see is, how will the young ever get jobs if the old never retire? They just keep getting better and better at their job. How will the young ever get jobs? That's the problem. But the bottom line is, if somebody decided to put on the ballot that we should ban the cure for aging, nobody's going to vote for that, because it's going to be a good thing. With all the negative stuff that happens, it's going to be a good thing. But I'm looking forward to the physicists and stuff like that getting us to other planets, figuring out how to go faster, close to the speed of light, how to work out black holes and wormholes and things like that, so we can find other places to populate, so that if we do have an overpopulation problem, we can handle it. And then that's only going to increase our ability to survive tremendously, because there's always that chance that some meteor is going to hit the Earth, and if we have people on some other planet, at least we have some humans that survived. So I'm excited. I just want to make one comment. It's not just extending lifespan and health span. I'm very, very into enhancing life as much as possible. Okay, and that's why I'm a big member, big supporter of the Transhumanist-Party. I'm very excited about everything they're doing. And then none of that ends death. We still can all die. We can all drive our cars off cliffs or things like that and die. But there's people like, I don't know if you've interviewed him before, but Randall Kone, Kone. He's actually doing some great work on figuring out how to upload your brain to a computer. And he's got tremendous amounts of funding from a lot of billionaires and stuff. And when that happens, you can imagine that your car's soaring off the cliff, and as the airbag opens, your brain's uploaded to a computer also, and you find yourself first in a computer and then in another body or something like that. But there's a lot of things that are happening just besides curing aging, transhumanist, what is it called? There's a word. Brain uploading is a slang word for it, but
Mind uploading.
there's another. Yeah, there's whole brain emulation.
Yeah,
that's the word. Whole brain emulation is what they call that science. But there's a lot of things. And then nutritionists, we got to keep healthy and stuff like that too, because we're not going to be able to invent a pill that makes you so you can be unhealthy your whole life too. You still got to work on that. A lot of the stuff going on besides what I'm doing.
Yeah. There's a huge convergence of the sciences at the moment. They're all sort of spiraling towards a single point. I found that with this show. Initially, this show was going to be a financial show, which is called Debt Nation. To talk about the financial side of a lot of what we're talking about the techs, and how the technologies how you could get in on those tech stocks and stuff like that. But there's such a convergence. Like I found I started to have use of my political brain, a geopolitical brain, my science side. I had to use all these other sides, and it was very quickly. I just ended up, because I was already friends with the transhumanist community, and then very quickly ended up in this spot where talking about all of these converging sciences, these converging sociological issues and everything. It's all converging on a single point at this point of time, and you have to sort of think dynamically. But the humans have kind of, although the future is broad and the future is unknown, and there's so many different possibilities, science kind of has a directional path it kind of wants to take, and I found that it's pulling and tugging in a certain direction, and curing aging is definitely near the top of that list, because if you're oceanographer, or if you're an astronaut, or if you're a if you're a psychonaut, or if you want to do physical sciences, or if you want to whatever you want to do in the future career in these xenobiologists or something, whatever you want to do, you're going to have to be around. And I found the life that people want to end aging and end all these diseases so that they can be around in the future in order to learn more about what they discover, because we're learning more and more each day about how much we don't know about anything, and people are excited to find out in the future what they don't know and what's coming, and everything. It's so exciting. I mean, the only real science out there that's sort of coming to a bit of a halt is like the real deep physics, because those guys are learning some of the fundamental laws and they're getting ahead of themselves. They can look back to the almost the start of the universe, the Higgs boson. They know what quarks are. They're mucking around with multiverse theory, and they're mucking around with hypothetical string theory and this and that, but they're kind of running out of things to do. But everybody else is on an upward trajectory right now. Everybody else is like, no, we're only just getting started. The tech is just here, ripe, rich to go. Even the geologists are excited because they've got the whole universe, all the different planets to do everything, and it's just there's so much to learn, and it's so exciting, and it's all primed, and people want to be around to go and explore that stuff, and to go and do it, and because we stand on a threshold right now, and yeah,
I don't, I don't think physics is coming to a close. I think they're just embarking on the stuff on alternate multi-universes, or multiverses. So it's like there's a whole bunch of stuff ahead of them. But I talk about, when I talk at a lot of my presentations, and people are asking, why do I want to extend lifespan? Why do I want to live as long as I can? Because I say I don't want to miss out. I want to be there when we discover all these great things and life on other planets and things like that. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, exactly.
Physics has a lot to go.
Yeah, fear of missing out. Yeah, oh yeah, definitely fear of physics has a lot to do. I just mean the mathematical side of it. Sometimes that if you talk to physicists, they say, there's a lot already mapped out hypothetically that they have. There's a lot to discover, of course. Yeah. What about these? Let's go back to aging for a second. So why do we age, and why do some animals like turtles or lobsters or I don't know, the Hippocaneus dorum or whatever it is, Ara Pastor always talks about, why did they not age? What's the science, but what's the reason?
Well, first of all, we don't know if they age. All we know is that they have undetectable aging. People didn't actually start looking at animals to see how long they age until after Darwin. And so people, and plus animals don't have things like rings on a tree, so you can tell how old they are just by looking at them. So in order to tell how old an animal is, in most cases, you have to be there when they're born, put them into a cage or an aquarium, and then just watch, see how long they go. And so lobsters, tortoises, humpback whales, clams, some fish, some birds, all those have been showing no signs of detectable aging even after 150 years. Like Charles Darwin had a pet tortoise named Harriet. She just died recently at 180 years old from some virus infection, had nothing to do with aging. Well, I did say that they don't have like rings on a tree, but clams do. And these clams, you can count their stripes. They get a new stripe every year, and they found clams over 500 years old now. But what's common with all these animals that I just mentioned is that they all have telomerase produced in every cell of their body. They have no telomere shortening, and as a result, they rarely get sick from diseases, and they have no detectable aging. And so that's what I got to qualify is that there are other animals that have the same thing. They have telomerase in all their cells, and their telomeres never get shorter, but they still have severe aging problems. And this includes all rodents, like mice and rats and rabbits and things like that. They all suffer from tremendous oxidative stress and mitochondria dysfunction. And so their aging is more due to that because their telomeres don't shorten. Their aging has very little to do with telomere shortening. There's a lot of papers where people have looked at telomere shortening, but there's not a lot of consensus on what's actually happening in mice. I just strongly believe it's their aging is more related to oxidative stress and mitochondria dysfunction. But there are, when a survey was done by people at the University of Texas Southwestern, where they looked at a lot of animals and just try to determine who has telomere shortening, who doesn't, who has telomeres in their cells and who doesn't. The only animals that they found that are like humans, that don't have telomerase produced in all of our cells and age by telomere shortening, are dogs, cats, horses, sheep, pig, deer, and other non-human primates. Everybody else has got something else going on. So there's a lot of things that cause aging. I describe them. Usually when I speak at conferences, I will show like 20 different theories on why we age, and I call them sticks of dynamite that are burning inside of our cells. And but the key thing is which stick of dynamite has the shortest fuse, and that's the one that kills off a different species. Well, humans' shortest fuse appears to be telomeres, whereas mice and other rodents, their shortest fuse is mitochondrial dysfunction and oxidative stress. And there's probably others too. It's the other type of animals if more research was done. But I want us all to be more like the lobsters and the tortoises, because they rarely get sick. They're very healthy, and predators are practically the only thing they have to worry about.
Yeah, they are incredible. And if you look at photos of tortoises that have survived through time, yeah, they look the same. I mean, I can't, to go back to, they've survived like so many presidents, like, and so many kings and queens, and they just look like they did 150 years ago. It's just amazing. I'm just always just amazed. And the more you think about that, because like when these first explorers, they went to the Galapagos Islands, they would have seen these big old tortoises or something there. But they might have thought they were born 20 years ago, But really, we don't know how long or old some of those tortoises were. I'm sure there must be an upper limit, to do with predators, and they get a nick and they get an infection, and there must be a sort of natural upper limit there, sort of. Depending on what they do in the wild. But yeah, it's just incredible just to see how they just can roll on, and it would be nice to see humans to get that as well. So what about this idea that because we talk about this all the time on this show, this sort of democratization of these medicines, these technologies, these cures, these preventions, these whatever you're describing your advances as. What the democratization and liberalization and accessibility, so that these could go into the hands of all people as opposed to a small elite? Is there provision for that? Or is it going to be some elitist clique who has to pay $1 billion for a gram of whatever you have to Dr. Bill Andrews cure or something? You know what I mean?
Well, my goal is to, when we have the cure for aging, is drop it from airplanes. Okay, make it available for everybody. I've never been in it for the money. I've just got a mission in my life to cure aging. And I always say, if I cure aging, and I'll find a job, I'll find money some other way. Just a speaking tour would probably make me rich, just hearing how I did it. But it's never been my goal. I'm not focused in that way. Now, that said, the gene therapy that we are testing right now, that's extremely expensive for us even. Okay, and I did license it to, as I mentioned, to a company called Labella Gene Therapeutics. And it literally costs $3 million to produce enough to treat one person once. And that includes all the testing, the doctor fees, the hospital fees, everything that's going on. So it is kind of expensive. Only the wealthy will be able to afford to do that if they pay to be in the clinical study. I know Labella is trying to raise money to put people in it for free, but it's really hard to raise that kind of money for something like that. It's the president of Labella. His name is Jeff Mathis. He's always saying the rich will save the poor, because as far as I'm concerned, this gene therapy will probably always be expensive, but it will provide tremendous proof of concept that lengthening telomeres provide health benefits to humans. And when we have that, then I think it's going to be a lot easier for us to raise funding. In fact, when the billionaires start paying to get the gene therapy treated on themselves, Labella will charge a profit, and a significant part of that profit is going to go directly into my research to come up with something that's going to be competing with the gene therapy that will hopefully not cost more than 10 cents a person. That's what I'm looking for. And right now, for us to do our screening of looking at chemicals, looking for pharmaceuticals, and design, not just looking for them, but designing new ones based on other data that we have, that costs us about $1 million a month. And it's not an easy thing to do. And it's getting a source of income from the gene therapy is definitely going to help with that. So we might put the gene therapy company out of business in 3 years, but they are not one bit opposed to that. So yeah, because I'm glad I try to work with people that have a passion for the cure for aging and of declining health with aging. And so I like that I've got partners that are selling different products and stuff. All of them are focused on what can they do to help me come up with a cure for aging and declining health with aging.
Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, because we're focused on trying to get those cures out to as many people as possible. That's the core values of the USTP. We don't want to see that those go into the pockets of a small elite. And it's just it's kind of like the genome project. Everything's DNA, discovering DNA. It always starts expensive. I mean, those things were billions of dollars, and those price collapsed, and they're going to be to $100 to $10 in the future. A kit you could buy down the store, but they always do start expensive, and they do sort of collapse in price as they become more efficient and as technology grows up around them. So you could see hopefully we could see
the cure for aging will get cheaper, but I believe that other methods besides gene therapy are going to win over in the speed to get it cheaper. So I think like doing the screening for small molecules that would accomplish the same thing as gene therapy will be way ahead of finding ways to make gene therapy cheaper.
Yeah, and Dr. Dan Elton and I had a discussion on small molecules, and he said that's inadvertently one of the best reasons to save the rainforest from destruction is because there's so many natural molecules in plants that almost you can't really reproduce them in a lab synthetically. That's kind of interesting. Small molecules in the rainforest and plants, because plants are a very powerful tool when used, and it's being eaten up to become maize fields or whatever, or tofu or just cleared for cattle or something.
I work with somebody that I consider the world's leading authority on natural products. His name is John Anderson, and he's probably been through these rainforests himself and gotten samples of a lot of different things. But most of the natural products that we test, we get from him, and he knows how to make extracts without destroying the activities in them better than anybody I've ever met. And so that's why we've had a lot of success at testing natural products. We've tested over 10,000 of his so far that he's found from all over the world, and he's saying that there's 3 million yet to come, okay, for us to test. So I'm a big believer in that. and you can synthetically make the natural products. The problem is that if you synthetically make them, they're not natural anymore, and the FDA then, or whatever the equivalent of the FDA in Australia is, they will exert control over it, and so it can't be put on the market as quickly without clinical studies and stuff. So.
Yeah, how do you find the FDA in America? We had a great primary season here at the USTP. Some people want to totally dismantle it. They think it's the biggest roadblock on earth. Other people want it just reformed. Others said it's doing fine. How do you actually are a real life person to deal with the FDA? Give us a news update.
Well, I would vote for the reforming. I don't want to get myself in any legal troubles for slander or something like that, but I do consider parts of the FDA one of the most criminal organizations on the planet. I have just seen too much emphasis on how much the money the doctors make, how much money the pharmaceutical companies make. I mean, there's been at least 7 drugs or treatments that I've been part in developing that I've gone through the clinical studies on, and I've seen some just disastrous things like we discovered a drug. In fact, I did a tremendous amount of work on designing it to make it enhance it, to make it more likely to survive the blood. It's something called thrombomodulin. And we were doing clinical studies on that, and we thought this was going to be the greatest thing in the world to prevent blood clots from ever occurring, to prevent atherosclerosis from ever occurring. And then the FDA just announced one day that they were halting the clinical study because it would put low molecular weight heparins out of business. That was one of some companies were making a lot of money off low molecular weight heparins. And I was shocked that that was the only reason that they gave why they just halted the study. Fortunately, just about a few weeks ago, now this was like 20 years ago, or more than 20 years ago when we did this study. I just checked recently and I found out some new clinical studies have gotten started again on this drug, but it's just like 20 years we've lost in terms of that. But then there's other things that I've heard and been involved in where it's like they control how the clinical studies are done. I've had many times when I've spoken at conferences where some official from the FDA will actually come up to me afterward and say, we'll never let you test a drug to cure aging because aging is not a disease. And so, I mean, the good thing is that they've gotten a little bit better. They finally have approved metformin for clinical study just to treat aging. But I've been a metformin user for over 10 years now because of its anti-cancer properties. I'm not a diabetic at all, but I've been taking like 2 grams a day for like 10 years. So I'm excited about what might come out of there, but I don't think it's going to make anybody. It's never going to make a 95-year-old 25 again. That's going to require a lot more than that. But one of the things that has happened recently is that the Trump administration has made it possible for people to do U.S. clinical studies outside the country. Okay, and they've also approved what's called the pay-to-play model, which means that when clinical studies are so expensive that the company that developed the technology can't afford to do the clinical studies, they can actually have the patients pay for it. And at least, that benefits at least the wealthy patients, but it also gives us the proof of concepts and teaches us how to make it cheaper, and like as I talked about with what we're doing. But this whole idea of being able to do clinical studies outside the country really cuts down on the cost. And I've been a lot of places. For the clinical study that Labella Gene Therapeutics doing, they've sent me to a lot of hospitals all over the country, and I am shocked at like some of the most poverty-stricken countries sometimes have the world's best hospitals, and it's like I've been amazed at some of these. And so I'm actually looking forward to the study getting done. The first patient is most likely to be treated in Colombia in South America, and they have just some amazing hospitals there. I would say one of the most amazing hospitals I've ever seen in my life was in New Delhi, India. Now I've heard there's Bumrungrad Hospital in Thailand, which I haven't seen yet, but I've just heard great things about that. So it's I think the FDA's not going to be that big an issue anymore. We are proceeding. We've now put together clinical protocols for 4 different what are called telomeropathies, diseases caused by short telomeres. We've gotten one of those onto what's called clinicaltrials.gov right now, which is the United States database of clinical studies, and that's for critical limb ischemia. And we have patients standing in line to get treated. They can't afford to pay it themselves, and we're still, Labella's still looking for the money, but we now have a clinical protocol purely for curing aging. And so the idea is to treat people that are like 95 years old, because I keep saying the worst thing that could happen to that person is not treat the person. Because that person, it's like when you're 95, you've got like a 50% chance of dying within 1 year. So it's like from just aging. So treating these patients is something I really want to do as fast as possible. And they're all in the works. And the FDA is not showing any troubles for us right now. So maybe they have reformed a bit. And I just haven't been paying attention. But through the 7 clinical studies that I've been through, I was pretty appalled, and it's been a while since I've been through any clinical studies, and just starting up again now might be an eye-opener for me.
Yeah, well, Trump is the Trump administration is the administration of deregulation. So in that way, yeah, I'm not 100% surprised. And well, talking about Colombia, Liz Parrish went to Colombia with some of your treatments, I think. Do you want to talk about that?
Well, she's an amazing person. Because of the clinical studies that I've been through, I know that there's a lot of problems that occur and things have to be tweaked and stuff like that. So I think she was very brave to treat herself, because there could have been problems. I'm not that brave, okay, but I'm glad she did it. And I saw her. I see her all the time. She and I are very good friends. But finally, when at this conference she and I were speaking at just a little over a week ago called the Rad Fest, I looked at her and I said, "My God, you look younger." And it was like, so we don't know, because we're venturing into the unknown. We don't know how long it takes, but she's actually showing signs of getting younger, and I'm very excited about that. I think that whatever happens, the work that she's doing to get people involved in this whole field is just so fantastic that she's going to get a lot of credit for when aging gets cured, no matter who ends up actually doing it. Aubrey de Grey, same way. He's amazing. He's got a lot of great ideas, very passionate. I don't know if you've interviewed him, but if you haven't interviewed him, you should do him and Liz Parrish. If you haven't interviewed Liz Parrish, they're fascinating people, very passionate about curing aging. And the good news is we don't consider ourselves competitors. Okay, maybe some of the people that might market some of our discoveries think they're competitors, but I sure don't. I'd look at Liz and Aubrey as people that are helping to cure my aging. I want to help them as much as I can, and the same in return. We all interact extremely well. But yeah, Liz Parrish, I am glad to see that there's finally some positive looking results. Just took slower, and as I said, it's a learning process. You venture into the unknown. There was a lot of stuff we could have learned from her treatment that we didn't, but I wasn't actually there to be part of that and the treatment and stuff like that. And so there was blood tests that I would have done and stuff like that didn't get done. But still, she got a lot of data, a lot of amazing results. And I'm hoping that the next studies we get a lot more data to follow up on. But I think, I think she's amazing for having done that. Braver than I am.
Yeah, she's incredible. Patient Zero, that's what they call her, and yeah, according to everybody who went to Radfest that I talked to, Radfest, if you haven't gone, go. It's fantastic. It's the premiere, the absolute premiere transhumanist conference, I guess, or whatever.
And
Yeah.
videos of all the talks are available now online. You can go to radfest.com and watch the videos of all the speakers. And I'll tell you that's of all the conferences, that's got the least number of what I call charlatans of any conference on anti-aging that I've ever seen. Real
Yeah, we
McCoy is at that one.
get rid of all the snake oil salesmen and actually talk to the real people at Sierra,
Yeah.
at Sens, or at BioViva over there. Yeah, no, friendly capitalism. That's what we like to see, because the emissary, the adversary is death itself, and aging, and that's a fearsome adversary. So you need every tool and every soldier and every trick in the book in order to overcome it. So working together, it's a stronger unit. So that's really good to hear that.
Since we're throwing out names, I should mention Greg Fay and Bill Falloon too. These are people that are very passionate, doing great things, and I feel like we all work together.
That's awesome. Yeah, we're going slowly. Yeah, well, now the USTP primary is over, and I'm moving back into a normal news cycle now. Now I'm looking at having all of these other people on. I've had acceptances of interviews by some of these people, but I haven't had time. I've been so busy with the USTP, with Ben Zion and Haywire and all these other people and the drama and everything. I haven't had time to.
And Charlie Cam.
Charlie
Cam's
Cam.
now running mate.
I love Charlie. He's a great guy, and he's just launching his mission to expedite the Singularity Institute to expedite the Singularity, which is interesting. That's nanorobots and are interesting as well. They could do a lot of the cleaning up job and help to keep our neurons clean and do a whole bunch of other cool
Keep
stuff.
our blood vessels open and everything. It's like very exciting in the future.
Yeah, the future looks very bright, and we just have to keep pressing on and to ensure that these technologies can assist us in a positive way, that we can hit Ben Goertzel's sort of positive singularity, or Ray Kurzweil's positive singularity. There's a lot of problems with the singularity, and we go into that as well. But yeah, we're looking to try and build those parameters, build the values that we can push towards a positive future like that, and that's what we want.
There's all kinds of problems, but I believe they all can be fixed.
I agree. We can do it, and it starts with and it's part of it is these telomeres and telomeres, and that's what you're doing. You're on the front line and trying to lengthen them, and it sounds easy, but it's not easy. It's it's an extremely complex process, and you're doing a great job over there at Sierra Sciences. Aging is something that I've recently had to think about. I was raised Jehovah's Witness, so their kind of end product religiously is a world without aging as well. And I just thought that was kind of the default motion, because after Armageddon, you end up back on Earth as a human that kind of doesn't age, as a physical being, but it would be nice if we could skip the whole God part and just do it ourselves, and actually go out and explore the universe in that way. So yes, I think aging is a disease. I've said that many times on this show. Detonation, mainstreaming transhumanism, putting death out of business. That's what we're trying to do, because there's just so much more to explore. You're a great guest, because you're right there on the front line, and you have been for a long time. What the Church of Perpetual Life also pushes metformin. What is metformin? And how does it help you and assist you? And why did you bring it up before? I was going to ask you about it.
Well, the reason I brought it up before was because, well, metformin is a drug that diabetics take. And like 10 to 12 years ago, it was observed that patients that were taking metformin had a lower incidence of cancer than diabetics that weren't taking it. So I kind of got really interested in it because at that time, I was still very focused on cancer research. And I still am. I should never say, I think shortening telomeres are one of the main causes of cancer and every disease you've ever heard of practically. But the results from this metformin suggested that it was inhibiting or preventing cancer somehow. Then they did another study to see, well, is this just in diabetics, or what happens if you give metformin to non-diabetics? And again, they saw the same thing. The incidence of cancer was reduced in the non-diabetics that were taking metformin. So I went to my doctor and I said, prescribe metformin for me. And he says, are you nuts? You're not a diabetic. And I showed him the papers and the studies and stuff like that. And he prescribed it for me. And so I became one of the first non-diabetics that could actually get it, just because I had a very open-minded doctor. I've heard a lot of people can't get their doctors to prescribe it because it's only meant for diabetics, but it's why I take it. Metformin does a lot of things. It's related to mTOR, which is a key molecule protein in the human cells that regulates a lot of different functions. We still have a lot to learn about it. It's now touted as a possible cure for at least partial aging, a part of aging. And clinical studies are underway right now. The guy who's heading that, I can never pronounce his last name, but his first name is Nir, N-I-R, Balazé, or something like that. I apologize to you for not, if he listens to this, for not pronouncing his name correctly. But I'm very excited about seeing what's going to happen. But I'm still a big fan. And we haven't talked about Sandy Kaufman, Dr. Sandra Kaufman. And she's written a really good book on supplements that you should take. And she spends a lot of time talking about metformin in her book. But people used to ask me all the time, what supplements do I take? And I had a very large regimen. And after reading her book, I just now say, go read her book, because I take everything she recommends. And I was so impressed with her book that I recruited her to be one of the principal investigators in our clinical studies. So, but yeah, you can learn a lot. Her book is called The Kaufman Protocol. That's one F and two M's, Kaufmann. And it's the Kaufman Protocol. It's available at bookstores and stuff like that. I just think it's an amazing book, and people should read it.
Kaufman Protocol, yeah. So if you're listening, go and check out the Kaufman Protocol. Maybe I can reach out to
You should have it on your show.
Yeah, absolutely.
You should have it on your show.
Supplements are just in the short time. These blue zone diets, green zone diets, supplements, stuff like that. I mean, this can all assist in getting to the first bio bridge. The bio bridge, right? That's what you want to aim for in this. If you want to live forever, I mean, you want to get to that first bio bridge, and supplements are right in there. Ray Kurzweil became very famous for his huge regimen of supplements. He was taking all sorts of things. Probably he still is, but he's down there in San Fran and in the tech bubble taking all those supplements. So yeah, supplements are an extremely important part, but generally, blue zone diets, green zone diets, or going running, or getting on your bike, or walking to work, or whatever you can do to enhance your daily daily living conditions in line with health is also very important. Just general fitness, stretching, doing some reading, exercising the mind, having enough social interaction, doing all the things that are healthy for a normal person all of these, decrease stress level. Don't do anything illegal. Try and stick to the speed limit. Like all the things that that we do in our daily lives that promote better living in the short term is also very important. It's not all just about these sorts of cures, but these cures are very are fundamental to the actual disease part, and that's what we're talking about: curing the disease part of the aging process, as opposed to and these other functions are tools that you can put in your toolkit. Yeah.
Yeah. Wait. Let me make a comment. Blue zones might be a little bit misunderstood. The people keep saying it's because of their diet and stuff like that, but Tom Perls did some research. It's Perls is the way you spell his last name. And he published a paper years ago where he went to these blue zones and other areas which were like the opposite of blue zones, and he sequenced the chromosomes of all these people. Okay, hundreds of people from each group, and what he found was a very low incidence of cancer genes and heart disease genes in the blue zones. And so the blue zones may actually have little to do with the diet as much as just a statistical phenomena of the genes that get shuffled around throughout the world just happen to have fewer heart disease and cancer genes in those blue zone areas. I've been like Okinawa, Milano, Italy are two of those places, but Okinawa has had me visit like 3 times because they don't no longer have the oldest living people, and they want that reputation back for their tourism. But even when people look back, even there was blue zones, they looked at their diet, they found other places where people were on the exact same diet, but they didn't live longer. Some had shorter lives. So it's like a question. It could be diet plays a big role. And believe me, I've got a very strict diet. I'm a complete vegan with no oils. I follow the teachings of Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn. And it's just, I do a lot of work to just reduce inflammation and stuff. But so I do think diet is important. But it's just recent, about maybe over 5 years ago, there's studies showing that it might not have anything to do with the diet. It might be just a statistical phenomena.
Right. Well, there you go. So that's very interesting. Well, but what about all these other things? I mean, you can do to enhance your daily living. I mean, that's important, right? Or do you think it's all?
I push meditation. I push endurance exercise. I believe that you shouldn't be doing endurance exercise at the level of like practically killing yourself. When I give talks on the subject, I will show people finishing marathons on their hands and knees, throwing up. That's not good for you. Okay, but I'll show pictures of myself like running over 100 miles in a race, and I'm waving at people, high fives and stuff like that, because I try to keep it fun. I think that's really good for you. And getting your CRP, C-reactive protein, and TNF alpha measured and things like that is a good way to monitor and make certain you're not overdoing it. And most of the studies on things like endurance exercise, that some suggest that endurance exercise might accelerate aging, they're flawed because they look at the wrong people. But I believe that endurance exercise is really good. I think meditation is extremely important for all kinds of health, especially what I call yin yoga, which is more of almost like a meditation type yoga where you do moves. I do yoga 6 times a week. I even have my own yoga studio here at my company here. But just because I think these things are de-accelerating or slowing down the rate of our telomere shortening. But I believe people should test their blood for foods that cause inflammations. There's companies in the United States called, I think you have in Australia too, called ALCAT, A-L-C-A-T, where a person can get their blood measured to identify foods that cause inflammation. I think one thing I think for certain, every single person who works on aging recognizes that the #1 cause of aging is inflammation. So reducing inflammation is key. And that includes lengthening telomeres will reduce inflammation, but it turns out inflammation also accelerates telomere shortening. So they kind of work together. But so that's the key, is to find, get on a diet that's low inflammation, and everybody's different. They got to find out what foods are they're sensitive to, and they can do that with like ALCAT test. But so I recommend ALCAT test. I recommend Dr. Sandra Kaufman's book, Kaufman Protocol, and I recommend Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn's book called Prevent and Reverse Heart Disease. Though when you read it, you realize that he talks a lot more than just heart disease. It's all how to reduce inflammation.
Inflammation. So inflammation is at the core of the issues. Aging is such a debilitating disease. It's been around with us since the beginning, I guess. Why did evolution imprint aging into us anyway? I mean, if we have to go to all this effort to try and reduce it, I mean, like the reason, like, because humans, their life expectancy has already expanded dramatically over the 20th century. It expanded dramatically. It's been expanding quite dramatically since, I guess, the agrarian revolution, like the post-industrial era. Definitely, through medical technologies have been right at the front.
Oh, sorry, yeah. I really want to answer that question. Can I take a break? Because somebody's calling me into my next room here. Can I? Is this gonna? You can take. I'll be right back. Hold on.
Yeah, you're all right. This is a great interview. This is a really, really good interview, and I'm having a lot of fun. And aging is definitely a disease, ladies and gentlemen, I think. No, definitely. Aging is a huge issue. Okay, everybody's getting older. It's the cause of almost all the diseases in itself. If we cure aging, we by default will cure a lot of the diseases that happen to before human beings, right? And if we're against death, and then we have to be against aging. Sorry, I'm just filibustering, telling people that we have to be against death and against aging in order to cure diseases. But yeah, so life expectancy is on the rise thanks to medical breakthroughs. Why is aging, like, why is what was I saying? Something about why is aging such an important? Why did nature engineer aging into us anyway? And it's so debilitating, and so it's a causes of almost all the diseases and things. Why?
Well, first of all, let me tell you that my PhD is in both molecular biology and population biology, so I'm really qualified to answer a question like that. And I've got some, I think, really good theories, because population biology is really evolution, studying evolution and why evolution works. But the key thing is to remember that evolution isn't to increase survival of the individuals in a species. Evolution is to get survival of the species as a whole. Okay, so evolution is all involved in like the reason why we're all here, the reason why you and I are having this conversation is that our species has been very successful at surviving a rapidly changing environment. Okay, well, how did we do that? Okay, well, we did that by shuffling our genes. Okay, so every time, let's say pre-humans, every time a male and a female would mate and produce offspring, that would create different varieties of gene variations that never existed before. So there was always an increase in the shuffling. Now here's the problem. If those offspring, or if the adults don't ever get old and feeble, and they're always going to be more experienced, they will never allow the offspring to compete for mates. And as a result, the older adults will always be dominant in shuffling the genes. So for instance, if you have, I actually talk about this a lot, and I'll show pictures of different genes and things like that and how they migrate. When there's breeding occurring, there's shuffling of genes. When you let those offspring breed, there's even more shuffling of genes, and then more and more and more. So it turns out that if you have two species and one has some mechanism to knock off the old, okay, to kill the old, I always say there's no evolutionary advantage to living longer than it takes to raise your young. After that, you are in the way. You're a competition for the young. And so in order for the species to survive, the young have to be able to do their part in shuffling the genes. So if you have two populations, one that has a mechanism to knock off the old and one that doesn't, and in every other way they're identical, in a rapidly changing environment, the species that knocks off the old is much more likely to survive than the one that didn't. So that's why we evolved aging, and that's why there's so many different types of aging. People like to think that we age the same way as fruit flies and mice and roundworms and yeast and stuff like that, but we don't. They're all very different mechanisms of aging. Trees, people keep talking about these trees that are 2,000 years old. Well, they have maybe one branch that's still alive. The rest of them's dead. I don't want my finger to be alive and the rest of my body dead and be called somebody who's cured aging. That's not going to be it for me. But it's aging is a very positive thing for survival of the species in a rapidly changing environment, and that's why we age. Nobody will ever prove that. I never debate that. That's my personal views. I consider myself an expert in all the fields of modifying genes for intentionally by humans or by nature, and so that's what I believe, and it's just something I think humans are smart enough to outdo evolution now. We're in control of our own evolution, just like eyeglasses. Before humans got smart enough and our eyes went bad, we were eaten by animals that looked at us as prey. We couldn't catch our own food. We couldn't do anything. We'd fall off cliffs accidentally. But now we've created eyeglasses, which has increased the survival of people. But there's been a lot of things like that humans done. And humans have made a lot of mistakes. I mean, we've wiped out a lot of species. I consider humans one of the most rapidly changing parts of the environment ever. Okay, humans have probably done more harm than maybe some asteroids that struck the Earth might have done more harm. But humans have done a lot of harm to destroy different species, make them go extinct. But we're only just learning this. It's only maybe 100 years ago people started getting the idea, hey, we're bad for the environment. And I think a lot of effort now is going to fix all that problems, except we still see the rainforest burning and things like that and destroying wildlife and people shooting rhinoceroses for their tusks. It's just awful, but I think it's getting less and less. So, but that's why we age.
Because we have a lot of shows on space on Detonation. Mr. Kurtz, he's been up to space in a MiG, and he brings along all these NASA friends and stuff, and it's great. And and we live in a post-Earthrise world. We're in a sort of a bit of a shock, and we live in a post-Earthrise world, and there's that global consciousness that's sort of forming, and it's been a bit of PTSD going on there, but I think we're hitting the point now where we're getting over it and we're moving on, and we're looking, and I think it's the reason that the space program is undercurrent of the reason the space program didn't do well in the 80s and the 90s, because there was excitement, we got to the moon, and then there was a shock. Recover this time and move on. And I think like what happened is you mentioned that these populations, humans are so successful because they've adapted to a changing environment. But yeah, we've hit that point now where we're terraforming, transforming, adapting the environment to suit humans, and I think that's the key difference in the 21st century, or the 20th century as well. But I think that going forward, the whole ecosystem is now in our hands, and it's a huge responsibility. And someone like David Attenborough, that's what they're trying to say. They're trying to say we're not at the mercy of nature anymore. You have to learn that you're the gods, and that without us, it's not gonna be a workable scenario. So yeah, this is the lesson that we have to draw on that front. So it's and there's many types of aging. Yeah, it's just like there's many types of diseases, right? There's aging is something that is it's hurting us, I think. Now I think historically it was probably part of a good evolutionary process to push us to a certain point. Hopefully that doesn't sound like condemning people to death or something, but like a necessary phase. But I think it's not. I think we've hit a point now, especially. See, I wouldn't want a bunch of. I mean, I got the transhuman bug because once I realized what transhumanism was, and that because there's a dynamic there with do we change technology and adapt it to us, or does it does it change us? And that's always fascinated me, that interaction and play there. And I just got the bug. But the I wouldn't want a whole bunch of unenlightened people living forever. But now that we have the tools of the Enlightenment, like that's kind of, it sounds bad, but we sort of needed to get to a certain point where we had certain tools, mental tools mainly, and now we have them. We can push forward and live longer. Without them, those mental tools, I think living for a really long time wouldn't have helped, because it would have stagnated. It would have just ended up in stagnated progress.
I agree. And right now, I think we're smart enough that the only way humans could go extinct anytime soon is if an asteroid or a meteor hit the Earth and destroyed all life on the planet. That's why I'm really hopeful that astrophysicists and things like that figure out ways of getting us onto other planets. And, there's Gliese 581G, which is my favorite. It's a planet that's only 40 light years from here. And it's 20 light years from here. I'm sorry. And if we could find a way to go half the speed of light, we could have people on there in 20 years. So I think a lot of that work has to be done. And when that happens, then the only thing we have to worry about is a black hole eating up the universe. But hopefully we live long enough that we'll figure out how to even go to other galaxies.
Yeah.
Okay. So I didn't mean universe. I meant galaxies. So the Milky Way galaxy could be eaten up by a black hole. And before, when I mentioned alternate multiverses, of course I was joking, but then there's always the alternate universes that we can go to too.
Yeah, and that's what physicists are trying to work out. I hope what I say there. I'm trying to not be arrogant either. I'm trying not to be. I'm not trying to sound like we're the pinnacle of human evolution. There was definitely smart philosophers and thinkers and pre-enlightenment thinkers and enlightenment thinkers that. Francis Bacon, pre-Francis Bacon, and I don't want to sound. I'm really trying to be careful of sounding like I condemn those people to death. But as I say, I'm a secular person, and I don't want the dark. I wouldn't want to give the Dark Ages those people, especially those clergy folk or something, an unlimited lifespan to live out that fantasy. Do you know what I mean? You know what I'm saying?
Oh,
they
absolutely.
didn't have the mental tools.
I agree with everything you said.
We'd be a theological species just perpetuating on this planet until an asteroid actually hit us, because it wouldn't have the ability, they'd be saying, Galileo, you're wrong forever. I mean, that's all they would be doing, right? It'd say, hey, I built this telescope in the middle of, and it wouldn't matter. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I agree with you 100%.
Yeah, no, well, that's good. That's good to hear. I'm not a madman then. I mean, I am a madman, but I'm not a madman in that way. That's really good. Well, anyway, yeah. So that's good. So, yeah. Well, is there anything else that I've missed that you want to speak on, that you want to add, that you want to put in before we run? Because there's, health span is really at the core of transhumanism. We want to ensure that people have not only healthier lives but better lives, mentally, physically, in every way possible. To increase, this is really really important. What else have I? What else what have I missed?
Well, it's more my perspective on things. There's a lot of people going around asking what is aging, and they're searching for all these biomarkers and stuff because they feel like one of the most important parts of curing aging is having biomarkers to measure. I always argue that that's not what I'm into. I'm into radical life extension. And that's part of what transhumanism is, radical life extension. So when I talk, I'll show like we're doing 160 biomarkers of aging in our clinical study, but I'll show a list of like about 20 or 30 of them, and then I'll say, but I'm not interested in these biomarkers. And I'll then show a picture of like a famous movie star. And the one I pick in the United States is Betty White, who's still an active movie star at 95 years old. And she was when she was 25 too. And I show pictures of her 95 and 25 side by side. And I just say to the audience, is there anybody here who doesn't know which photograph of Betty White was taken first? And everybody laughs because it's obvious which ones. We don't need biomarkers to be looking at that. My mission is to turn somebody like Betty White into a 25-year-old again, who feels, looks, behaves 25 in every way imaginable. So that's one thing. It's like I'm not so focused on the biomarkers, though we are looking at biomarkers anyway in our study. The other thing is a lot of people believe that aging can't be as simple as just making a few changes. There are actually scientists that have reported that in selection, like looking at populations that are long living and populations that are short living, they find 1 million alterations to the chromosomes. Well, I think that's misleading. That's why it's good to have a PhD in both molecular biology and population biology, because I look at that differently. I recognize there's only 25,000 genes in the human body, and so 1 million changes are actually very redundant to some extent. But I also recognize I'm very knowledgeable about how gene regulation occurs. Genes get turned on and off like light switches do, like more like dimmer switches. And I understand how DNA folds and how it can interact with other genes, how telomeres could actually fold over and turn genes on and off. And so I believe that not only telomeres, but even methylation are things that maybe just a few changes could end up causing a lot of changes that are needed to reverse aging. And in the case of like telomere lengthening and shortening, we have already seen that we can affect hundreds of genes. When we let telomeres get short, we see hundreds of genes change in their expression, which is that dimmer switch. They turning them on and off, their expression level. When we lengthen the telomeres, we see all that reverse. So even though there's hundreds of changes that might have to occur, it could all be due to just one change that causes all the other changes. DNA methylation, telomere lengthening, shortening are two of the most obvious choices there. But I believe that curing aging just might be a simple thing. It just might cost a lot of money to do it, but I think it's going to be simpler than a lot of pessimists are thinking so far.
That's good to hear. And I guess, like, how would you get Betty White to stop at 25 and wouldn't turn her into a Benjamin Button where she would just keep going back to day dot?
Well, that's a good question, because we're only reversing aging, not development. Okay, so most developmental biologists, and I've spent a lot of time studying that, the development is very different. So when we're born as a baby, we age and we develop. But pretty much about the time of 24 or 25, most of the development has ceased, and then all we do is age.
Mm.
Well, we're only trying to reverse aging, not development. Now, there are people that are working on things called the Yamanaka factors. They're like there's some other terms they use for this, but the ways of turning like a skin cell, human skin cell, back into a embryonic stem cell. And those, I'm afraid, are going to reverse aging and development so much that you'll never be able to really reverse aging without causing the whole body to become like an embryo again. But I'm not, so I am interested in studying what they learn about in their research, but I think it's not going to be an avenue towards curing aging. I think we got to find something that only reverses aging and not development. And I think telomeres is the key there.
Wow, interesting. Well, I'll have to go back through. I'll have to go back through this video and watch and watch it again and have a listen and learn a lot and take notes and because I watched a few of your videos before I came in and yeah, very interesting stuff coming out of Sierra Sciences. If you're gonna have a few big breakthroughs, yeah, keep me on the hotline because I'm really interested to see what you guys come up with.
Well, next year is it. I guarantee there's some very exciting things that are going to happen next year.
Yeah, and I'll come to I'll come to America hopefully next year for RadFest. So hopefully we can meet up then. Get the old photo, you, me, Chairman, Brett and Ali. I think that would be a good photo. We can get everybody else in there as well. We'll get Liz Parrish. We'll get Cam. It'll be a great photo. But
yeah, get us all together. We're all a great team.
Yeah,
and I'll tell you, RadFest is probably going to be in Asia soon, and probably even Australia soon. So RadFest is becoming extremely popular, and there are people who are talking about building their own RadFest in some of those other countries, and those are in the works right now. Asia, I think, will be the next one. Whether it's China, Japan, or Korea, hasn't been decided yet, but there's a lot of interest in developing a RadFest there.
That'd be really good because yeah, I'm a bit isolated here in Australia from all of the action. It all seems to be happening in the United States. But if we get something a little bit closer, that would be very good for me personally. But I still want to go to American RadFest because it seems like there's a lot of energy there, especially you know. And you know, with someone like Ray Kurzweil, you know, coming along, talking about, I think that's really cool. But yeah, keep me on the hotline, and we'll see how it goes because curing aging absolutely needs to be done. Everlasting life in a healthy way, you know. Sounds good to me. I'm sold. I mean, why not? I mean, let's do it.
Well, let me say one more thing, and that's that it's not just us, our pets, our dogs, cats, and horses. They also age by telomere shortening, as I mentioned before. We are in the works of trying to cure their aging too. It's unfortunately things like Great Danes, and Liz Parrish has 2 Great Danes. They only live 9 years. That's just awful. That's like a crime. It's such a great animal. So curing their aging is also on our list, and so expect some great things coming on those soon too. Also,
yeah, friends of. I mean, there is that other option of cryonics, I guess, and you know, friends of the show.
The last resort, resort, and I believe in it big time. I'm a big believer.
Big believer in cryonics.
Yep.
Alcor.
Alcor, other companies too. People like Greg Fay, who I had mentioned before, have been leaders in doing that. Max Moore, just a tremendous leader in the whole field. They haven't exactly figured out how to thaw people yet, but at least they have figured out how to freeze people. So I definitely, if I suddenly found out that I was going to die a week from now, I would definitely get myself frozen, just because I believe that eventually they're going to figure out how to thaw people out. And then cure whatever disease they have. So I'm a very big believer. But I always call that the last resort. Hopefully we can keep ourselves alive in other ways before then, but that's the last resort.
All right. Dr. Bill Andrews, thank you very much. Sierra Science is coming on and talking to me. I got so excited, I got carried away, and I stayed up way too late, and then I forgot my notes, and then I was but we got through anyway. I think stumbled through. You did a fantastic job, holding my hand and pulling me through that. So thank you very much for that. And no, good luck. I mean, there's issues and there's problems. We're going to stay here at Detonation and pound through and follow the Ben Zion 2020 campaign. All the best to Ben Zion, his 2020 campaign. We need the conversation around aging, ending aging, about transhumanism to perpetuate and proliferate through the society. People need to know that this exists, that there's options, that if you're in America, anywhere in the world, that the U.S. Transhumanist-Party is doing things on this front, and that we need people talking about it. We need investors investing in these companies. We need people starting to buy these products. We need Fox News to interview people like you. We need to get you on Joe Rogan. That's something that Brett Nally was showing.
Yeah, he's on a big mission to do that. Yeah, right now.
I totally agree. I mean, Aubrey's been on there. Why not you? So I'll endorse the notion if you name drop me during. No, I'm just kidding. You got to get on there anyway. But get on there, get the people talking, get that Twitter thing, tweeting, and if people are talking around these issues, because you never know what information, what specialists, what tools, what inspiration you could give out once it fans out to on the individual level. That's absolutely true. Someone like Gennady Stoliarov II has absolutely been fundamental in inspiring me to go on this mission. But that's just he did his YouTube channel, and it's all very high intellect stuff, and that attracted me. But that doesn't attract the majority of people. The majority of people want some sort of theater or some sort of easily consumable product. And I think getting you on Joe Rogan or some big giant platform like that, I think that's the sort of generic conversation that we want to stimulate in society, that gets people thinking about it. Because if people are saying, yes, aging is a disease, and people are saying, no, I don't think it is, that's a conversation that's worth having.
Yeah, well, I agree. All right.
Thank you very much for coming on.
We've done everything. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. It was a great show.
All right, fantastic. That's Detonation. All more coming to you all this week, where we're putting death out of business. That's Dr. Bill Andrews. Thank you very much.
Thank you.